All right, guys. Welcome here at DAPP Center. I'm going to be introducing you a project. It is a privacy token and crypto mixer wallet that you're actually able to send transactions anonymously. It's called Bermuda. And I have the pleasure to actually have Mr. Black. He is the head of development of this project, Bermuda. How you doing, Mr. Black? Thank you for joining here, being on this channel. How you doing today?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Black, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about yourself and what you guys got going on at Bermuda.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you mentioned, I'm Mr. Black. I'm head of development for Bermuda. Bermuda is a legally compliant DeFi privacy solution that allows for wallet obfuscation when sending, swapping, holding any kind of ERC20 tokens with wallets. And then when sending out as well, it helps prevent the recipient from being able to view where those holdings have come from, where those tokens have come from, or be able to, block explore your own holdings in your own wallet.
Wow. I'm a holder of the token. I'm a believer of the project. I've actually used the application myself, and I'm actually a huge fan of this. So I'm super excited to have you on my channel here. And I need to ask you this. I know a lot of people are asking out there, how is this project different from like Tornado Cash? And how are you guys able to be legally compliant? Because we know what happened with Tornado Cash, they got sanctioned off in a lot of parts of the world and so forth. So how are you guys going to be different from them?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered part of that question yourself. The biggest difference, looking at it from an outsider's perspective or a bird's eye view, the biggest difference is that legal compliance. In terms of looking at the underlying tech stack or the technology behind the two systems, it's literally night and day. Bermuda is a completely fresh take on the kind of privacy sector, if that makes sense. It's a completely different model. We run a fully internal team. So all of the code base was written from scratch. Unlike a lot of these kind of other projects that are booting up left, right, and center, we didn't actually clone the Tornado Cash repo. It's a completely fresh contract that we wrote us that was written in-house, and all of our code base is completely clean. So looking at the two products in a fundamental workflow perspective, Tornado Cash worked off what's called zero knowledge proofs, which is certainly it kind of sets the bar when it comes to privacy, kind of privacy in crypto. The one fundamental issue with working off that kind of model that focuses on zero knowledge proofs and redemption of funds via private keys and things like that is that there's almost no oversight that a project can actually have over that workflow. And so in the case of Tornado Cash, for example, and one of the big reasons that they were getting sanctioned was that they had no control over their system and they had no accountability as to how their system was being used. So if we look at the kind of most recent figures that are quoted for Tornado Cash usage, it's alleged that 66% of usage on Tornado Cash was perfectly legal transfers, which leaves about 34% that was allegedly associated with some form of criminal activity, whether that be, laundering money to terrorist cells, or, there was obviously a lot of stuff that came out with the North Korean hack, or any kind of, whether it be mafia in Miami that was linked to it as well. Like there's a number of different connections that were made there to illicit activity. And when you look at the trading volume that was going through Tornado Cash, like they had billions of dollars getting put through their protocol in their last year of operation before they were sanctioned and ultimately shut down.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money that was getting laundered and funneled through that system for illicit gain is just insane. And so when we kind of came up with the idea after Tornado Cash got sanctioned, there was definitely a hole in the market, and we identified that opportunity, like probably 20 or 30 other projects that are either launched or are about to be launched at the moment in the privacy sector. But the main thing from our perspective was, how can we look at a model that's sustainable for the long term, that provides people with the assurity that they're not going to get their wallets blacklisted, they're not going to get blacklisted from USDC and centralized exchanges and all that kind of stuff, and they're going to be able to, we're going to be able to produce a model where we're not going to run into those regulatory issues issues in the future, and we can build a solution where we look at the long term. And so, to my knowledge, we're the only project that has actually tackled the issue of legal compliance head on. There are other projects out there that have been able to navigate the legal compliance in other ways. But to my knowledge, we're the only project that's actually taken that head on and looked at how can we be accountable for that ourselves rather than passing that accountability off onto someone else or having no accountability whatsoever. And so that's kind of the big issue. That was kind of the big issue that we looked at in the start, and really what we've built our whole workflow around, really focusing on that legal compliance. So to give you a bit of a breakdown on that, as I mentioned, Tornado Cash worked off a zero knowledge proof system, or what's called ZK proofs. So Bermuda works, as I said, it's a completely different workflow and a completely different protocol. So we've implemented what we refer to as a Web3, Web2 hybrid model. So we still do all of our transaction signing, verification, security on our Web3 layer, so that you've got the security of the blockchain and you've got the security there when it's coming to when it comes to transactions. But then we have a Web2 layer that sits in the background, and the Web2 layer, in essence, what it does is it records the break in the chain that go along when you're committing transactions. And so it essentially just creates a private audit trail in the back end that, again, it's private. It's a private ledger that no one in the public has access to it. And it sits behind 3 separate abstraction layers. So it is a very, very secure housing of that information. But it basically means that if the United States government come to us, for example, and come to us with a particular wallet address and say, we know that this wallet address is associated with a terrorist cell, or we know this wallet address is associated with, high level criminal activity. And just for context, like, the government's not really, they're not concerned about the, little things. They're looking at the big players, and it's the big players that you really need to protect yourselves from. However, in saying that, we are, obviously working towards a system that is fully used for legal purposes. But it's mainly those kind of big players that the government obviously goes after. And so what it means in that case, if we get hit with a warrant or a subpoena or something like that on a particular wallet address, we can provide that information to law enforcement agencies and give them the break in the chain, so that we can say, if they come to us a wallet address and they say, we know that they've sent funds out of this account, we can tell them where those funds have been sent to, or alternatively, if they've been sent to a particular wallet, we can tell them where those funds have been sent from. So as I said, it's a private ledger that remains in the background. It's very, very secure. And the only time that access is ever granted to specific records within that is when we're hit with a warrant or a subpoena. So as I said, it's a case of we're looking at actively taking accountability for that legal compliance, and it's a multifaceted approach. As I said, we record the break on the chain, which is more of a reactive model, but we also look at a proactive model in terms of actively deterring people from using our service or our protocol for illegal activity. Now, as you can understand, the fact that we do record the break in the chain is a massive deterrent to anyone looking at doing anything illegal immediately, because they know that information is going to be recorded. But on top of that, we also work with a number of different sources that are constantly being updated on wallets that are associated with criminal activity. And so what we do is we actually blacklist those wallets in our system and prevent them from being able to make any connection or any deposit into our protocol to begin with as well. So it's a proactive approach as well as a reactive approach. So as I said, we record the break in the chain. We blacklist known bad actors. And the other thing that we can do as well is that we can actually geo-block entire regions where the percentage of those kind of criminal activity is higher. We can actually geo-block those entire locations. So for example, we've geo-blocked all of North Korea. No one within North Korea has the ability to use our service. We've geo-blocked parts of the Middle East that have kind of that high affiliation with kind of terrorism, and parts of Russia as well. So, and certain parts of Europe. So as I said, it's a proactive approach and a reactive approach. But as I said, to my knowledge, we're the only project that's actually taken an approach of accountability, if that makes sense, where we look at addressing the problem head on, rather than either passing that accountability to someone else, or again, just having no accountability at all.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are creating a solution here to the problems that we're seeing. I mean, you're being proactive on blacklisting, known bad actors. You're You're even going to be able to help law enforcement and so forth if they wanted to get information on, you know, transactions and so forth. I mean, I'm definitely sold on this. I mean, it's definitely a very solid use case, and I'm super excited about it.
The thing with it is the thing to remember for people, like as I said, like Tornado Cash definitely set the bar when it came to privacy. But
Yeah.
the thing with it is that there needs to be a balance that's achieved between providing the right level of privacy for users, but not providing safe haven for criminal activity. And that's the problem, that when you operate on those models such as, zero knowledge proofs and things like that, where you have this just completely untraceable system,
Yep.
all you're doing is you're making yourself a target for government entities. And again, it's like I think you're going to find over the next couple of years, all of these different projects that have propped up with that have no sense of accountability with them, they're all inevitably going to meet the same fate as Tornado Cash. And I suppose the problem with that is that, like, if you looked at Tornado Cash, it wasn't just a case of the project got sanctioned. There were a lot of legitimate wallets that also got sanctioned at the same time. And so those wallets may have had, quite large balances if it could have been US, like a stable coin in them, but they were blacklisted from all of the exchanges from everywhere. So they had no way, but they were basically bricked wallets. So you had perfectly legitimate people that had used that service. And as a result, they'd lost thousands and thousands of dollars because their wallets were blacklisted purely because they used that service, regardless of whether or not they were doing something illegal or not. And so
Wow.
that's the kind of concern in the industry with privacy at the moment. And as I said, it's really a balancing act. You need to find the right balance between providing the right level of privacy. And the irony of it is that for your everyday user that just wants to, they're not looking at doing something nefarious. They just want to, exercise privacy and not allow people to be able to look up their wallet address. We provide that. As I said, we more than provide enough privacy there for the everyday user. It's just a case of we're not providing a safe haven for people that are, looking to use our system for nefarious purposes.
So let's talk about the token. You guys got the BMDA token. You know, what is its main purpose and functionality?
So first and foremost, the BMDA token, first and foremost, it supports the project, and holding that token supports, the continued development of the project. We really looking at BMDA as a governance token in the long run over the protocol. So the way that we've basically we've organized the tokenomics on our utility and on our protocol is at present, if you hold at least $1,000 worth of the BMDA token, then we basically let you use the app completely free. There are absolutely no service fees whatsoever. There's obviously gas that's incurred on any normal transaction, like you would in working in anything in ERC20, but it's literally just the gas fee as you would normally, but there's no other fees associated with it whatsoever. If you're not a token holder, then we still let you use the app, but there is a 2.5% service fee that's incurred when you're executing transactions within the system, which I might add is actually still less than dealing with is still less than the spread that you cop on most centralized exchanges. So it's still quite a cheap fee. But again, it just helps us it helps us just fund the project for those that aren't holding our token. Looking at that 2.5% service fee, and kind of tying into the tokenomics of the token and the project as well. So out of that 2.5% service fee, 0.5% of that does a buyback and burn on BMDA tokens. So we actually do a chart buy and then immediately burn that supply. So it supports anyone that is holding our token. 1% is a buyback and burn on whatever token was interacted with. So we'll talk about this more in detail, looking at the different projects and tokenomics and things like that. But we really with this project, we're really trying to take the attitude of, uniting DeFi and looking at how we can support other projects as best as possible, and particularly those that have chosen to partner with us. And so, as I said, that 1% of that service fee. So if we support SHIB, for example, so if someone does a transaction on SHIB within the protocol, then 1% of that transaction will do a buyback and burn on SHIB, which does two things. It benefits the project itself, but it benefits all of the holders of that project as well. And that's the thing that we're kind of really looking at. We see Bermuda very much as a community-driven project. And so we want to provide that support and benefit to all of the different tokens and projects that have chosen to partner with us. So yeah, 1% of that goes to that, goes into that. So the remaining 1% goes to a dev wallet for us that again continues to fund development on the project. So that's looking at it from a DApp perspective. Holding the token, there's 0% buy tax and a 5% a 5% sell tax. The 5% is broken down into 2% to marketing, 2% to dev, and a 1% burn on sells. So at present, that's basically how the token's operating. Moving into the future, and this will be tying into what we're calling our V3 launch, which will be happening on the 15th of April. Okay. We will be releasing a DAO and staking pool as well. So holding the token will tie into that quite heavily, where we're looking at an update that provides a huge amount of benefit to people that are actually holding our token. So tying into the DAO, based on the supply that you are holding of BMDA will give you certain privileges within the DAO to be able to vote on different proposals or vote on different tokens that we onboard. Or alternatively, if you hold a certain threshold of supply, it will allow you to propose other projects that we bring in, for example. And then obviously tying into staking, we're looking at how we can generate, look at kind of like an APY for users that hold our token as well. So as I said, it will act as a governance token, and we're looking at adding as much utility to holding the token as possible, and providing as much benefit to users in the future.
Wow, that's amazing. Definitely a holder, hodl, guys. So let's talk about exchanges. Do you guys have any plans on getting the token listed on a centralized exchanges in the near future?
We've got, for anyone that's looked at our kind of token breakdown or our holders list for BMDA, you'll notice that there's a 10% allocation of tokens that's in a locked wallet for a 12-month period, a 12-month lock. So we will be looking at centralized exchanges in the future. That 12-month lock should release, I think it's January next year. So when that releases, that will be the time that we look at centralized exchanges, and we will be, looking at what we do there. What I will note, that what I will kind of mention though, is that and again, we'll probably talk about this more in depth shortly, but our real focus of our project is on DeFi. And particularly on Ethereum DeFi. We've got some, on our roadmap, we're looking at cross chains in the future and supporting other layer 1s and layer 2s. But our primary focus is really on ERC20 DeFi, because that's what we can provide the biggest benefit to. That's what's lacking the most when it comes to privacy. There's obviously a number of different, blockchains that have been created, like Monero and things like that, which is obviously completely private. But really what this project's focused on is looking at how can we support existing ERC20 projects that lack the kind of fundamental right to privacy there. And so that's the real market that we're going after, and that's the market that we're kind of looking at supporting the most.
Nice. And it sounds like you already touching on the roadmap. That's going to be actually one of my other questions is, give us a time for, what is the roadmap looking like? I mean, it looks like you guys got centralized exchange listings coming up next year. You got stuff going, announcements coming up here next month with the V2. What else do you got going on?
The biggest announcement is, or the biggest release that we're doing is actually coming out next week on the 15th of March. So at present, basically the way that we're perceived at the moment, we kind of fall into that mixer category, because we've got utility at the moment that allows people to be able to send tokens to an external wallet anonymously, right? And so we're kind of lumped into that mixer category. And so the long-term goal for the project is to basically move us out of being a mixer and out of being perceived as a mixer and more into a fully fledged privacy solution with a privacy wallet, if that makes sense. And so what we're looking at doing there is basically adopting and incorporating all of the functionality you would expect with a privacy wallet. So it's no longer just about sending tokens and more about looking at long-term utilization or long-term, storage within the system. And so obviously, the main thing that we need to introduce there in order to achieve that is a privacy DEX. So that's something that's getting released on the 15th of March. We're just in our kind of final stages of development and testing for that at the moment. So there will be a fully fledged privacy DEX within the system that will have integrations with both Uniswap and PancakeSwap. So it operates as a DEX proxy. And basically what we will do, what that will mean for a user is it will give users the ability to buy, swap, sell, hold, everything that they want to within the Bermuda protocol itself. And so it basically, rather than having to, conduct your trades outside of, in MetaMask and things like that, where all of those trades are obviously visible, you can do all that within the protocol. And so we execute those trades on a contract level. So once you've deposited, your initial tokens into the platform, you can, as I said, you can hold, buy, swap, sell, and no one will know who's committing those trades. And so there's a couple of benefits that obviously provides. Obviously, what it means is that, the privacy aspect to it, that no one can see that you're committing those trades. And we've also got what we call a swap and send function, which means that you can be holding one token in the system. And then if you want to send tokens out to someone else, on the fly, you can actually say, this is the wallet that I want to send them to, but I want to send them a different type of token. And so on the fly, it will actually swap those tokens for you and then send out the new tokens. So I could be holding Ethereum and I want to send someone SHIB, for example. And so it will swap the Ethereum for SHIB and then immediately send that out to whoever the external wallet is, without them having any ability to be able to track them. The other benefit that provides when we introduce the kind of swap functionality within the system, it dramatically increases our obfuscation ability over transactions and people's ability to be able to track where those funds have come from, for example. So that's one of the big things that we're releasing in V2. Which, as I said, is coming out on the 15th of March. Looking at other kind of things that are coming out in that release, the other big ticket item that we've got in there is that we're creating what we call hot swap bridging functionality, which is essentially similar to how a centralized exchange works as well. They incorporate a similar workflow where basically what happens is when you log into Bermuda, Bermuda will create on the fly, it'll actually create its own bridging wallet for you. And what that acts as is an endpoint where you've got your own wallet address, which is, it's different from your personal wallet. It's a wallet that Bermuda has created for you. And you can use that wallet address to send tokens from anywhere whatsoever directly into your private Bermuda account. So from a centralized exchange, for example, you could send your tokens from a centralized exchange directly into your Bermuda account without any trace as to where those tokens have come from whatsoever. So it dramatically increases our functionality and our ability to look at how tokens are deposited into the contract. And it also opens up the potential for us in the future, which isn't coming in this release, but it is something that is on our roadmap. It gives us the ability to be able to suddenly look at things like fiat on-ramps, for example, where you can convert real world currency immediately into a privatized token that's stored within a privacy wallet. So there's no trace whatsoever of where those funds have come from, and you've converted real hard cash directly into a system where your funds are completely private. So that's another big thing that we're introducing, and looking at the kind of hot bridging wallet functionality. I'm just looking at what else that we've got coming out in this release. We've overhauled the UI quite a bit for this release as well, and moving towards just a slightly more intuitive user interface. And yeah, just a lot of different kind of general improvements that are coming out next week. As I said, beyond that, looking at the April 15 release, that's our DAO and staking update, which will have our DAO and staking functionality added in there. As part of our DAO structure, we really wanted to try and look at and say, how can we make it as fun as possible to hold our token as well? We wanted to kind of add just a little bit of gamification to that process as well. So I'm not going to say too much about it, because we will have a release coming out about that in a week's time, about what's happening in that next update. But as I said, we're looking at the process of how can we make it a fun experience if to hold our token and participate in that DAO. Bermuda, our kind of community, for example, is called the Bermuda Armada, and we've kind of got this Navy theme that carries through kind of what we're building and what we're doing, and our holders have really embraced that. And so we're kind of looking, I suppose the alpha or the tease that I'll give you there is that we're really looking at how we can kind of expand on that concept of having this kind of, kind of Navy hierarchy or Navy kind of ranking system, and looking at how we can tie that into DAO systems and staking and all that kind of stuff. So we got some really exciting things that are coming out with that. And as I said, I think it'll just make it quite a fun process to be involved in the project as well. Oh, yeah. As I touched on, beyond that, looking at our future roadmap, we're obviously looking at cross-chain bridges. That's obviously just a logical progression for the project, that we start looking at how we can support. Obviously, BSC is the big one. That's the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. But we're also looking at how we can work with a number of other layer ones and also some layer twos as well. So we're looking at possibilities around Arbitrum. And we're also looking at, we support Colt, for example, and we've got a great partnership with Colt. They're another fantastic DeFi project. And so we're in discussions, or we're doing some research at the moment, some exploratory sessions as to how we could potentially work with their new layer 2 that they're bringing out, Modulus. So there's lots of stuff that's kind of happening at the moment with that. But yeah, again, we're a very active dev team. Because we're fully internal, we have the ability to be able to release these updates on a fairly regular basis. And so, yeah, we've got a pretty busy schedule over the next, kind of 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are really working hard. Lot to come. I mean, you guys got a DEX exchange coming, a swap. Wow, just amazing. So you touched in on partnerships. You mentioned Colt. You mentioned a few other projects like SHIB. Let's talk about partnerships. What other partnerships do you guys have? What other projects do you have partnered with and so forth?
Yeah, look, again, very good question. So the project is as I kind of touched on before, it's very much community driven in terms of what we're looking at. And so a lot of the projects that we've got on board so far has really been around what projects would our community like to see listed, if that makes sense. And so we've done a number of different voting, and this is one of the reasons we felt it quite important to move to a DAO structure, because it formalizes that process and makes it very, very transparent to all our holders as to why decisions are being made and how those decisions have come about, if that makes sense, as to who we support and whatnot. So, as I said, moving to a DAO structure is quite important for us with that, in that regard. So at present, like we've kind of been blown away by the support of some of these different projects, but we obviously support your main coins like Ethereum, USDC, USDT. We also do WB, wrapped Bitcoin. But then we've got a number of different ERC20 projects that we look at. SHIB, Floki, Alcazar, Shido, Colt, Volt, Omi, Zvoid, Sky Token. There's a whole heap of them there. And on average at the moment, we're onboarding 2 new projects a week. We do get asked sometimes, why wouldn't you just list anyone, if that makes sense? Why wouldn't you just open it up so anything can be supported? And there's a couple of reasons why we've chosen not to go down that path. The first one is, from a security perspective, it's important that we actually have control over who we list, because some tokens will have malicious functionality within their contract. And so it presents a security risk to us, and it presents a security risk to our holders. If we open it up to anyone, we could have a particular user that brings some random token into our contract, and in doing so allows that token to act nefariously within our contract, and potentially, it could be a case of it makes our contract behave in a way that we don't want it to, or worst case scenario is obviously having the ability for someone to be able to siphon funds out of our contract. So again, it's a security measure that we put in place, that anytime a new contract is proposed, the first thing we do is we go and audit the contract of that token to make sure that, number one, it's not upgradable, so nothing can be changed in the future, and number two, that there's no red flags in there in terms of functionality and stuff like that. So it provides a surety to our users and all of our holders that are using our system that every token we've supported has gone through a compliance process to ensure that not just anything can be put into the system, and that the tokens that we are supporting are projects that that comply from a security perspective, but also projects that we align with on an ethical basis as well. As I said, it's really from our perspective, it's a case of looking at how we unite DeFi. And so we're wanting to work with projects that share that same ethos with us and that align with our kind of vision around that. And so we've been very fortunate with some of those partnerships. Khóa is a perfect example. The Khóa community's really backed our project, and it's been a great thing for them. Same with Vault, for example. And the thing that I'd mention on Vault is that to my knowledge, we're one of the only projects outside of centralized exchanges that Vault has actually whitelisted our contract.
Wow.
And so that is a massive thing for Vault holders. Like, as anyone that holds Vault knows, that there's a 13% transfer tax on that service, and they like to burn like no one else.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a 13% transfer tax. And so the fact that they've whitelisted our token means that they can utilize our service and store their Vault, or, execute trades on their Vault without incurring that, or send their Vault out to, move it between wallets without incurring that 13% transfer tax. So that is a massive thing in itself. And we've got a few projects that have done that, that have gone through that process of whitelisting with us, which, as I said, it provides huge benefits to the holders of those communities. And I suppose it's testament to, I suppose, the alignment of both of the projects, that we see each other as two projects that are both doing something that's highly beneficial to the DeFi community. And so it's really looking at more of a partnership rather than just a listing of how we can provide, a huge amount of mutual benefit to both the projects.
Yeah. And what's really great too is your communities are collaborating as well. I mean, it sounds like you guys are really becoming really community driven. And speaking with those that are watching here now, you guys will have the opportunity to join their communities. Down in the description, I will have links to their Telegram group and their Twitter account and so forth. So yeah, be sure to join their socials, so that way you guys can stay up to date with all the latest news and announcements and have direct communication with all their community members. So, Mr. Black, I got a few more questions here for you. One of the questions I have is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are having to deal with right now, just in the crypto space in particular? Any challenges or any setbacks?
Look, the one comment I will make, and this isn't necessarily specific to us, it's specific to pretty much anyone in crypto. Look, building in a bear market is obviously not the easiest thing to do. It certainly comes with its share of challenges. I think that we've been very, very fortunate in the sense that we've gotten enough support from our community already that the project is paying for itself, and it is funding itself at the moment, because that's quite obviously quite a huge thing, that for any new project, you go through this transitional period of being self-funded of being privately funded to it funding itself, if that makes sense. And it is expensive to get this kind of stuff, particularly running an internal team. It is like, we've got 11 people on our team. It's an expensive operation. For context for people, before we released our DApp, the first version of our DApp, we'd invested over $100,000 in getting the system off the ground. And that's a very common thing in DeFi. It's probably cheaper we actually probably save money because we're a fully internal team rather than paying third parties, but it is a very expensive thing. And so the heads of the project, myself and Mr. Rock, we funded that out of our own pockets to get this project off the ground. And so you obviously want to transition into a period. You want to transition as quickly as possible out of privately funding something into the project becoming self-sufficient and sustainable. And so we were very fortunate that we actually reached that goal really by the start of February. We were in a position where the project had started funding itself really after a month. And so it's obviously a challenge, just managing your cash flow and managing your outgoings on a project. It's something, as I said, in a bear market, it can be a daunting thing. It can certainly be a daunting prospect to launching these kind of projects, but we've been very fortunate that our community has really backed us there. With that, look, I suppose moving beyond that, like the only other real issue that we've come into contact with is just prioritizing what to release, if that makes sense. That our team's got so many great ideas for this project. And so like we've planned out the next 12 to 18 months of what we're going to build with this. And so we've announced a lot about what we're building. The irony of it is that there's actually significantly more on our roadmap that we haven't announced yet, or we haven't told the community about. So we've got some massively exciting things coming in the future that we haven't mentioned to the community at all. But again, you constantly want something with any kind of crypto project or any business whatsoever. You constantly want something new to talk about, to keep people excited, to keep people, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, if that makes sense. And so you need to be careful in terms of how you release information, and so that you've got that kind of constant stream of information. So people are aware that we are always doing something in the background. We're always working on something, and there's constantly something new being released. The issue with releasing like an 18-month or a 2-year roadmap off the get-go, the first thing it does is it locks the dev team into a particular order in which things need to be done, if that makes sense. And you might want flexibility around that order in the future. Like, for example, we might have things on our roadmap that we see that we're not going to work on in 12 to 18 months. But if our community, for example, start requesting that functionality, and they come to us and say, look, it'd be really great if it could do this, chances are that's probably already on our roadmap. But if that's something that's being heavily requested, we want the ability to be able to rejiggle our roadmap and bring that technology forward for people to meet the demands of our holders. And so if you strap yourself into a too rigid roadmap over, like an 18-month or a 2-year period, as I said, it just removes the flexibility of the team and their ability to be able to rejiggle that and make those decisions. And so we look at our roadmap really as kind of like a 3 to a 6-month forecast as to what's being released. And so every 3 months, we'll start releasing more snippets on what's coming over the 3 months after that. So as I said, it's just been another challenge in terms of looking at the order in which we build things for users. But I suppose to summarize and what we're looking at, we're moving away from this mixer model and being associated with any of those other kind of mixer projects. And we're moving towards a fairly unique offering, if that makes sense, something that certainly our team's never seen done before, and moving into a unique space in DeFi where I had someone in our team describe it perfectly the other day, where they called it, we're basically building a decentralized sex. Where we're providing all of the functionality that you find, the convenience that you find in a centralized exchange, but we're building it completely on DeFi. And that's something that DeFi has always lacked, if that makes sense, because it's funny because like you have 2 types of investors in crypto. You have people that just buy off, just trade off centralized exchanges, and they don't even know what DeFi means. Like they have no concept that there's this whole other world of investment there. And then you have people on the other side of the coin where they're obviously they tend not to do anything with centralized exchanges unless they're converting to fiat, and they operate completely in DeFi. And so what's really lacking at the moment is bringing a solution to the market that offers all of the functionality, all of the convenience of a centralized exchange, but doing it in a way that's fully built on a DeFi stack, that you're not copying spreads. You're not having to deal with any of the fees that are associated with a centralized exchange. And so that's essentially what we're building. We're building this middle ground that brings all of that convenience of a centralized exchange into DeFi. And as I said, the only fees that you ever pay, if you're a BMDA holder, you only ever pay gas fees. So you're never paying more than what you would normally, just connecting MetaMask to Uniswap. And so that's, again, that's the direction that we're moving in on a long-term basis.
It's amazing. So one last question I have for you. You guys mentioned you have a team here. I think you mentioned 11 people on the team. Is there anything more you could tell us about the team, and why does the team choose to stay anonymous?
Yeah, again, another good question. So, I might address the doxing aspect first. So, first and foremost, we're a privacy project. We're obviously very private ourselves, and it was also a case of, because of the nature of the project, we didn't want to paint any unnecessary targets on the project, and particularly devs. Any devs doxing, in my opinion, is never a great idea, because you're essentially giving people Web 2 information about yourselves to help them track you down and try and find exploits in a project. And so given the sensitivity of the project, we saw that as something that was important. But furthermore, tying in beyond that, like myself, for example, I own several companies in the real world where I have real world clients, Web 2 projects and things like that. And I act as the chief technology officer for a number of international companies, a couple of which are in the finance sector. And I'm very heavily associated with those companies in the real world. And for me, for example, and other members of our team, if we were to dox, people would try and make connections between this project and some of those financial companies or some of the companies that we work with in the real world. And those companies would definitely not appreciate that connection because they have nothing to do with this project. So that's kind of the first part of it. Again, it's for our point of view, it's more just about protecting the project and safeguarding the project. In saying that, what we're doing at the moment is we are going through a process of picking a top tier auditor. We're looking at either Hacken or Certec to do that. And part of the reason that we'll be bringing them on board, and when it's not just a case of auditing our contracts, they're going to be auditing our entire system from the ground up, code base, workflows, contracts, everything. And so we're actually going to be looking at putting them on a retainer for the next probably 6 to 12 months while we have this aggressive schedule in place, so that our users have a surety that everything that we're building is not only legally compliant, but is safe. It is safe to use and it's secure. There's no risk of people getting their funds hijacked or anything like that. So, and as part of that process, we do have to KYC with them. So we will go through a KYC process with certain bodies where we need to. And then they can obviously, based on that KYC, based on us KYCing with them, they can obviously, provide a surety or assurances as to who we are. But the other thing as well is that this is our 4th crypto project that we've released over the last 5 years. Our team's got 3 other, still to this day, quite successful projects that are in the mix. And we didn't want to necessarily coattail off the back of those other projects. We are very heavily doxed on those other projects. The last project, for example, we released that right before the last bull run. We rode that up to just under, fairly close to a $200 million market cap. And that project's still quite healthy at present. It's obviously not sitting quite that high anymore, but it is quite healthy at the moment. We wanted Bermuda to kind of be able to stand on its own 2 feet rather than, riding on the coattails of other things that we've done. We wanted it to build our own community around that, around Bermuda, and really strengthen that so it can stand on its own as well. So as I said, there was just a number of different reasons that we kind of looked at and came to the decision of, it's actually better if we remain private. The thing that I've been surprised about, we thought we were going to cop some fart or some grief for that in the beginning, making that decision. The thing that's been really interesting is that people get it, if that makes sense. And I've been really surprised by that, but it's people are like, it's a privacy project. Why would they dox? Like it's, for most of our investors, they have no issue with that whatsoever. And I think the other thing as well is that because we're a utility-based token, people can see what we're building. Like, people that rug projects don't go to the effort of spending 6 to 7 months and investing over $100,000 in building utility projects to then go and rug it. Like it makes no sense for us to do that because we're literally just wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars on our outlay and our investment. And I think the other thing is as well is that people have seen over the last couple of years that more than half the projects that get rugged these days are by doxed teams anyway. So it's kind of like it doesn't make that big a difference in today's world. And as I said, our team, our holders have been really understanding of that, and that was the thing I'm really happy to see, that people can see what we're building and they can see the future that we're taking with taking the project in, and that in itself is enough, instills enough confidence that they don't care who we are because they understand why we're private ourselves.
Yeah. We are all Satoshi.
Well, that's exactly right. It's yeah.
So, well, guys, that pretty much concludes our AMA questions here today. And I do want to appreciate Mr. Black for being here with us and tell us everything about Bermuda. And I'm super excited to hear about all the exciting things you guys got going on. Sounds like you guys are gonna have a really busy work schedule ahead of you guys, and we're gonna be watching you guys. We're gonna be watching, definitely watching development and the community grow as well. And is there anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Black, before we get off here?
Uh, Not really. Look, I mean, the main thing would just be that we just want to say that we are incredibly grateful for the support that's been shown to the project thus far. As I said, building and releasing a project in a build market is a very daunting prospect. Like it's very daunting thing because it can go downhill very, very quickly. And we're very, very grateful for particularly our community. I mean, our internal team as well, and our marketing team is all fantastic. But the support that our holders has shown us throughout this period, and just the way that they backed the project and help us really get off the ground there is just phenomenal to see. And as I said, I suppose in response to that, we just want to, myself and the team just want to say that we won't let you down in that regard. We will continue working our butts off to bring you the best utility that we can. And again, this is a long-term project for us. We're looking at, we're going to have an active, as I said, our roadmap as of right now, our roadmap is planned out for the next 18 to 24 months. So we're going to be writing this well into the future and really looking at just how we can build a sustainable product that's going to stand the test of time.
It is a marathon, not a sprint. That's
exactly right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. Guys, be sure to check out the website and their communities down below and stay tuned for more videos. I will see you guys on the next one. Adios. Bye-bye.